Captain Susan Miller stared at the massive alien ship through the main viewport of the Earth vessel Audacity. The ship was at least 20 tons larger than their own, shaped like a perfect diamond with glowing blue lines running across its dark surface. This was humanity's first contact with alien life, and Susan felt the weight of that responsibility on her shoulders. "They're hailing us again, Captain," said Communications Officer Donna Ward. Her fingers hovered over the control panel. "Same. Message as before." Susan nodded. "Put it through." The screen flickered to life, showing what appeared to be the bridge of the alien vessel. In the center stood a tall, insect-like creature with 4 arms and 2 legs. Its exoskeleton gleamed with a metallic purple sheen, and it wore what seemed to be ceremonial armor covered in strange symbols and small metal objects that might have been medals. "This is Captain Susan Miller of the Earth exploration vessel Audacity," Susan said, standing straight with her hands behind her back. "We come in peace and welcome this historic opportunity for first contact." The alien made a series of clicking and humming sounds. After a moment, a mechanical voice came through the speakers. "I am Admiral Zexthaler of the Galactic Imperium, ruler of 342 species across 12,000 star systems." The translation had an unexpectedly high pitch, making the imposing alien sound like a cartoon character who had inhaled helium. Lieutenant Greg Porter, standing at the weapons console, made a strange choking sound as he tried to hold back laughter. Susan shot him a warning glance. "We have observed your world for some time," continued the squeaky voice of the fearsome alien admiral. "You will now be evaluated for potential inclusion in the glory of the Imperium, as is our sacred duty laid down by the ancestors 16,000 years ago in the Great Binding." Greg's face was turning red with the effort of not laughing. Beside him, Navigation Officer Peter Harris was biting his lips so hard it might bleed. "We would be honored," Susan managed to say with a straight face. "We suggest a meeting between our representatives to establish diplomatic relations." "Very well," squeaked the Admiral. "We shall commence the 97 steps of first contact, as established by Imperial Protocol. Step 1 requires that you accept this transmission of the Imperial Grand Greeting, which I shall now perform." The alien straightened to an even more rigid posture and began a series of elaborate movements with all 6 limbs while making a high-pitched singing noise. The performance went on for nearly 5 minutes. By now, most of the bridge crew was struggling not to laugh. The combination of the serious, elaborate ritual and the chipmunk-like voice was too much. Science Officer Alan Reyes had tears streaming down his face as he pretended to study his console with intense focus. When the Admiral finally finished, he stood expectantly, waiting for a response. "That was very impressive," Susan said, feeling sweat form on her forehead from the effort of maintaining composure. "On behalf of Earth, we..." At that moment, Greg Porter let out an explosive sneeze. He had been trying to hold it back for a past minute, but it erupted with such force that he actually jerked forward in his seat. The effect on the aliens was immediate and dramatic. Admiral Zexthaler dropped to what appeared to be a defensive stance, and alarms began blaring on the alien bridge. Other insectoid crew members scurried around in apparent panic. "Biological attack," screeched the translator. "Containment protocols activated." No, Susan raised her hands. "It's just a sneeze. It's normal for humans. It's not an attack. What is this?" "Sneeze?" demanded the Admiral, still in a defensive posture. Susan looked at Dr. Olivia Bennett, the ship's medical officer. Olivia stepped forward. "A sneeze is an involuntary expulsion of air from our respiratory system. It happens when something irritates the inside of our nose. It's completely harmless." The aliens conferred among themselves with rapid clicking sounds. "You expel bodily particles ... involuntarily?" The Admiral's tone suggested this was both disgusting and alarming. "Yes," said Olivia. "All humans do it. We also cough, hiccup, burp. Enough." The Admiral's voice reached an even higher pitch. "The Imperium species evolved beyond such primitive biological responses eons ago. This is most disturbing." Susan tried to salvage the situation. "Perhaps we could move on to step 2 of your protocol?" The Admiral straightened again, though he kept more distance from the screen. "Step 2 requires the ceremonial exchange of atmospheric compositions as a symbol of shared space." As the Admiral began another elaborate ritual, security, Chief Frank Johnson whispered to Greg, "Don't you dare sneeze again." "I'll try," Greg whispered back. "But did you hear his voice? It's like talking to my daughter's toy mouse." This set off a wave of suppressed giggles among the crew. Susan shot them all a warning look. 3 hours later, they had made it through. Only 12 of the 97 steps. Each step involved an elaborate ritual that the humans found increasingly difficult not to laugh at. The Imperium representatives were clearly becoming annoyed by the humans' lack of proper solemnity. They were in the middle of the ceremonial reading of initial treaty terms when disaster struck. As Susan attempted to repeat a particularly complicated phrase about mutual non-aggression, she suddenly hiccuped. The reaction was immediate. The Admiral backed away from the screen, and several alien crew members began spraying something into the air around them. "What new biological weapon is this?" demanded the Admiral. "It's just a hiccup," Susan said, mortified. "Another involuntary. You told us the previous one was a sneeze. Now you claim this is a hiccup. How many weapons are you concealing? Is your species composed entirely of biological armaments?" The situation deteriorated further when Alan Reyes, unable to contain himself any longer, burst out laughing. The sound sent the aliens into another panic. "It's an emotional response." Olivia tried to explain. "Humans express joy through laughter." "Joy? During a sacred protocol ceremony?" The Admiral sounded scandalized. "The Imperium eliminated such disruptive emotional displays from our societies 10,000 years ago. By the end of the day, the first contact meeting was called off after completing only 15 of the 97 steps. The Imperium ship withdrew to a safe distance to reassess the biological hazard presented by human unpredictability. As Susan sat in her quarters that evening, she received a message from Earth Command asking for her report on first contact. "How do I explain this?" she asked the empty room. "How do I tell them that humanity's first meeting with an advanced alien empire was derailed by a sneeze, hiccups, and laughter?" She began typing her report. "First contact established with the Galactic Imperium. They are advanced, organized, and completely unprepared for humans... 3 weeks after the awkward first contact, Chief Diplomatic Officer Paul Wright sat in a small room aboard a shuttle headed for the Imperium's regional headquarters. The massive space station orbited the 4th moon of Proxima Centauri, just a few light years from Earth. Paul reviewed his notes one last time and sighed. "Something wrong?" asked Officer Nancy Rivera, who sat across from him. "Just going over the paperwork the Imperium sent," Paul replied. "We have to sign 37 separate forms acknowledging our biological unpredictability before they'll let us into their headquarters." Nancy laughed. "I still can't believe Captain Miller's hiccups almost caused an interstellar incident." "The Imperium takes their protocols very seriously," Paul said. "That's why Earth Command sent us. We need to show them that humans can be diplomatic." The shuttle docked with a gentle bump. As the doors slid open, Paul and the 5 other members of the human delegation were greeted by a row of different alien species, standing in perfect formation. Their guide, a tall blue-skinned humanoid with 4 arms, stepped forward. "I am Junior Protocol Director Clib," the alien said through a translator device that, thankfully, didn't make him sound like a cartoon character. You will follow exactly 3 steps behind me at all times. You will speak only when addressed. You will touch nothing without permission. The humans nodded and fell into line behind Clib. As they walked through the station's massive corridors, Paul was amazed by the diversity of alien life. Some floated in special containers, others moved on many legs, and some seemed to be made of light or gas. The Imperium includes over 300 species, Clib explained as they walked. Each has been carefully integrated into our perfect system over thousands of years. They entered an enormous circular chamber. In the center was a raised platform surrounded by hundreds of seated aliens of various shapes and sizes. On the platform hovered what appeared to be a swirling cloud of purple gas contained in an ornate metal vessel. Council Member Vrixna will now address you, Clib whispered. Do not interrupt under any circumstances. The gas cloud began to pulse with light as a voice echoed through the chamber. I welcome the representatives of Earth to the Galactic Imperium, said Council Member Vrixna. Before we begin discussions of your potential place in our grand civilization, you must first understand our glorious history. What followed was a detailed account of the Imperium's development over 12,000 years. Vrixna described wars, treaties, and political developments with excruciating detail. The speech continued for over 4 hours without a break. Paul struggled to stay alert. Beside him, Nancy shifted uncomfortably in her seat. The other human delegates showed similar signs of restlessness. Just as Vrixna began describing the 7th era of galactic standardization, Nancy raised her hand. The entire chamber fell. Silent, hundreds of alien eyes turned toward her. Yes, human? Vrixna's voice sounded annoyed at the interruption. I'm sorry, but could you tell me where the bathroom is? Nancy asked. The silence that followed was absolute. Clib made a strange, choking sound. The ... bathroom? Vrixna repeated the word as if it was completely foreign. Yes, the restroom, toilet? Nancy tried different words, looking increasingly uncomfortable. Paul leaned over to whisper to Nancy. I don't think they have them. Clib finally recovered. Enough to explain. Most Imperium species evolved beyond the need for waste elimination facilities centuries ago. Our bodies process with perfect efficiency. Nancy's face turned red. Well, humans haven't evolved beyond that yet. This led to a hasty recess while the Imperium officials scrambled to create a temporary facility for the humans. Paul could hear the aliens discussing this primitive biological need with a mixture of disgust and fascination. When the meeting resumed, Vrixna continued the history lesson with noticeably less enthusiasm. Finally, after another 2 hours, the council moved on to discussing the terms under which Earth might join the Imperium. All member species must adapt to our standards, explained a tall, crystalline alien that introduced itself as the Minister of Integration. This includes adopting our calendar system, measurement units, and social protocols. How long does this adaptation usually take? Asked communications specialist Frank Johnson. For most species, between 50 and 100 Earth years, the minister replied. Some biological modifications may be required. Modifications? Paul asked cautiously. Nothing major for most species, the minister said. Usually just adjustments to eliminate unpredictable biological functions, emotional outbursts, and individual thinking patterns that might disrupt harmony. The humans exchanged worried glances. Now, Vrixna continued, we will proceed with the ceremonial exchange of cultural artifacts. You will present your planet's anthem, and we will respond with the Imperium's grand harmony. Frank Johnson stood up with a data tablet. His job was to play Earth's chosen anthem. He tapped the screen, but nothing happened. He tapped again, looking increasingly nervous. Technical difficulties? Paul whispered. I think I mixed up my playlists, Frank whispered back in horror, "I can't find the anthem." Just then, the speakers came to life. But instead of a dignified anthem, the chamber was suddenly filled with the pounding beat of Frank's workout playlist. Heavy bass shook the room as a popular dance song blared at full volume. The reaction was immediate. Several aliens covered what appeared to be hearing organs. 3 council members entered what Clibb later described as emergency stasis. Vrixina's gaseous form swirled violently in its container. Frank managed to shut off the music after about 30 seconds. But the damage was done. The once orderly chamber was in chaos. "I am so sorry," Paul said, standing up and trying to restore calm. "That was not our anthem." When order was finally restored, the Empyrean Council seemed to view the humans with even more suspicion. "Your species displays a disturbing lack of discipline," Vrixina stated. "Yet there is also something interesting about your unpredictability." The meeting ended with the Imperium agreeing to continue diplomatic relations, but with numerous new restrictions on human behavior. As the delegation returned to their shuttle, Paul couldn't help but feel they had both failed and somehow succeeded at the same time. "Well, that could have gone worse," Nancy said as they boarded. "How exactly?" Paul asked. "No one sneezed," she replied with a smile. On the journey back to Earth, Paul wrote his report. The Imperium was powerful, ancient, and organized beyond anything humans had achieved. But it was also rigid, stagnant, and seemed to have lost something important along the way. The Empire had reacted to human unpredictability, not just with alarm, but with a hint of fascination. Paul ended his report with a note. The Imperium has spent thousands of years eliminating chaos from their society. They may not be prepared for humanity's special talent for creating it. Dr. Olivia Bennett stood nervously before the Imperium's Cultural Assimilation Committee. 1 month had passed since the diplomatic mission led by Paul Wright, and now it was her turn to represent humanity. As the leading expert on human cultural studies, she had been chosen to present Earth's cultural highlights to the Imperium. The committee chamber was smaller than the Grand Council room, but still impressive. 7 aliens of different species sat behind a curved table, watching her with various types of eyes, sensory organs, and data interfaces. "You may begin your presentation, Dr. Bennett," said the chairperson, a tall reptilian alien with iridescent scales and 3 blinking eyes. Olivia activated her presentation tablet. "Thank you for this opportunity. I'm here to share the cultural achievements that define humanity." She began with art, showing images of famous paintings and sculptures. The committee members watched without reaction. She moved on to music, playing short samples from different periods and styles. Again, the aliens showed little interest. "Our music appears to have no effect on them," Olivia thought. She decided to try something different. "I'd now like to present an important aspect of human culture. Comedy?" asked a small, furry committee member. "This term does not translate well." "Comedy is entertainment designed to make people laugh," Olivia explained. "Laughter is a physical response to humor things we find funny or amusing. You deliberately create stimuli to trigger involuntary physical responses." The reptilian chairperson sounded confused. "For what purpose?" "For enjoyment," Olivia said. "Laughter makes us feel good. It helps us cope with difficulties and bond with each other." The committee members looked at each other with expressions Olivia couldn't read. "Please demonstrate this." "Comedy," requested the chairperson. Olivia showed a clip of a classic slapstick routine where a man slipped on a banana peel. She waited for a reaction, but the aliens simply stared. "The human fell down," noted one committee member. "Is this humorous? Because humans are physically fragile?" "Not exactly," Olivia said. "It's funny because it's unexpected and temporarily harmless misfortune." She tried again with a stand-up comedy clip. The comedian told a joke about airline food. Again, no reaction. Perhaps humor requires cultural context, Olivia suggested. Let me try something more universal. She showed a video of babies laughing. At peekaboo, for the first time, she saw a reaction. The furry committee member leaned forward slightly. These young humans laugh when the adult disappears and reappears, the furry alien noted. This is a response to a threat that proves false? In a way, yes, Olivia said, encouraged. The surprise followed by relief creates pleasure. She continued showing different types of humor puns, physical comedy, and absurdist jokes. Slowly, a few committee members began showing interest. One even made a sound that might have been a suppressed laugh. The concept of creating entertainment, specifically to trigger laughter, is unusual to us, the chairperson finally said. The Imperium values stability and predictability. Most member species evolved beyond such emotional responses long ago. But laughter is one of humanity's greatest gifts, Olivia argued. It helps us see problems from new angles and connect with each other. The presentation ended, and Olivia was dismissed. She felt disappointed. The committee had seemed mostly confused by human humor. But as she left the chamber, she noticed the furry committee member watching a video on a small screen. It was the babies laughing at Pete-a-boo. 2 weeks later, strange reports began coming in from across the Imperium space station. Junior Officer Ryan Davis was the first to notice while monitoring communications for the human embassy. Dr. Bennett, you need to see this, Ryan called out as Olivia passed by his desk. On his screen was security footage from an Imperium cafeteria. A young alien of the same species as Admiral Zex Thaler was hiding behind a partition. When another alien walked by, the first alien jumped out and made a loud noise. The second alien jerked back in surprise, and then both made strange chittering sounds. Are they ... playing peekaboo? Olivia asked in disbelief. Looks like it, Ryan said. And there's more. He showed her several clips. In one, a gaseous alien, similar to Council Member Rixino, was changing colors rapidly, causing smaller aliens to emit sounds that seemed like laughter. In another, a reptilian alien was telling what appeared to be a joke to a group of colleagues. Your presentation might have had more impact than you thought, Ryan suggested. The next day, Olivia was summoned to meet with Admiral Zex Thaler. She entered his office nervously, remembering the disaster of first contact. Dr. Bennett, the Admiral said, his translator now set to a more natural pitch. We have a situation regarding human cultural contamination. Contamination? Olivia repeated. Yes, since your presentation, there has been an outbreak of inappropriate behavior among younger members of several species. They are attempting to create what you call jokes and deliberately causing laughter. I don't see how that's a problem, Olivia said carefully. The Admiral's forearms moved in what might have been frustration. The Imperium functions through order and predictability. For 12,000 years, we have maintained stability by eliminating disruptive influences. Like laughter? Olivia asked. Like unpredictability, the Admiral corrected. Your human comedy encourages chaos. It causes individuals to question established protocols. Just yesterday, a junior navigation officer suggested a more efficient route than the one used for the past 800 years. When asked why, he said he was thinking outside the box, a phrase from your comedy presentation. Olivia tried not to smile. And was his route more efficient? The Admiral paused. That is not the point. But Olivia could tell from his hesitation that the answer was yes. Later that day, Olivia met with Admiral Kelly Harrison, the highest-ranking human in the newly formed Space Force. The Imperium has officially classified humor as a Class 3 memetic contaminant, Admiral Harrison told her. All human cultural materials are now under quarantine. They're afraid of jokes? Olivia asked in disbelief. They're afraid of change, Harrison replied. The Imperium has maintained control through rigid conformity for millennia. Suddenly, their younger generations are questioning authority, making jokes, and worst of all, innovating. So what happens now? Admiral Harrison smiled slightly. Officially, I've been ordered to apologize for humanity's destabilizing influence and restrict the sharing of human cultural materials. And unofficially? Unofficially, I think the Imperium just met its match. They've conquered hundreds of species through force or intimidation, but they've never encountered a species that could defeat them with laughter. As Olivia left the Admiral's office, she saw a group of young aliens from different species huddled around a small screen. They quickly hid it when they noticed her, but not before she heard the unmistakable sound of human comedy. The laughter epidemic had begun, and Olivia suspected the Imperium would never be the same again. Commander Jack Nelson rubbed his tired eyes as he stared at the stack of digital forms on his desk. 2 months had passed since Dr. Bennett's comedy presentation, and the Imperium's response had been predictable. More rules, more paperwork, and more bureaucracy. The Imperium had created a new department called Human Containment, requiring all interactions with humans to go through 19 separate approval committees. Jack, as the new head of trade negotiations, found it nearly impossible to get anything done. "Any luck with the farm equipment deal?" asked his assistant, Maria Lopez, as she entered his office with another stack of digital forms. Jack shook his head. "Still waiting for approval from the Committee of Technological Exchange Risk Assessment. That's committee number 12 out of 19. This is getting ridiculous," Maria said. "At this rate, it will take years to establish basic trade." "I think that's the point," Jack replied. "The Imperium is trying to slow down human influence." He looked out his office window at the bustling Imperium space station. Despite the official restrictions, humans had been establishing a presence. Here, a small human embassy now occupied one section of the station, and human traders were permitted in certain areas. "The funny thing is," Jack continued, "the more they try to contain us with bureaucracy, the more we find ways around it." He wasn't wrong. As official channels became too cumbersome, informal networks had sprung up. Alien merchants eager for human goods created unofficial trading posts. Imperium citizens fascinated by human culture arranged unauthorized meetings. "Speaking of finding ways around rules," Maria said with a small smile, "have you heard about Lisa Cooper's movie nights?" Jack nodded. Lisa was a junior communications officer who had started showing Earth movies to curious aliens in her quarters. What had begun as a small gathering had grown into a popular underground event. "Is she still doing that?" "The Admiral told her to stop. She moved it to Storage Bay 7, Maria replied. "Last night she showed a comedy. I heard there were over 50 aliens there." Jack was about to respond when his communication panel lit up. "Commander Nelson, please report to Admiral Harrison's office immediately." Jack and Maria exchanged worried looks. Had Lisa's movie nights finally gotten them into serious trouble? When Jack arrived at Admiral Kelly Harrison's office, he was surprised to see the Admiral smiling. "You're not going to believe this," Harrison said, gesturing for Jack to sit down. "The Imperium just caught Lisa Cooper running her unauthorized movie nights." Jack winced. "How bad is it?" "The interesting part isn't that they caught her," Harrison said. "It's who they caught attending. Over a dozen high-ranking Imperium officials, including 3 members of the Supreme Council." Jack's mouth fell open. "You're kidding." "It gets better," Harrison continued. "They were watching human comedies, and apparently they've been regular attendees for weeks." The revelation caused a major scandal throughout the Imperium. Many older officials demanded punishment for those involved, while younger members questioned why watching human entertainment should be forbidden at all. Meanwhile, human innovations had begun spreading through Imperium space in ways no one had anticipated. A week after the movie night scandal, Jack received a visitor in his office. It was Clib, the blue-skinned alien, who had guided the first human delegation through the Imperium headquarters. Junior Protocol Director Clib, Jack greeted him. "What brings you here?" Clib looked around nervously. "I need to speak with you privately." Jack closed his office door. "What's this about?" "Several days ago, I observed a human engineer making a simple adjustment to a waste recycling unit," Clib said. "She used a small metal tool to bypass a clogged filter rather than replacing the entire unit as our protocols require." "Yes, we call that a quick fix," Jack explained. "It's more efficient sometimes. It saved 17 steps and reduced resource usage by 84%, Clib said, his voice filled with wonder. When I asked why she did not follow standard protocol, she said sometimes you have to think outside the box. Jack tried not to smile. Dr. Bennett's phrase was spreading. "I have begun testing other quick fixes in my department," Clib continued. "We have reduced processing time by 62%. "That's impressive," Jack said. "But I'm guessing your superiors aren't happy about these changes." Clib's 4. Hands fidgeted nervously. "The Supreme Director has ordered us to stop all unauthorized innovations. But many of us believe the human approach is ... better." Jack realized what was happening. It wasn't just human comedy spreading through the Imperium, but human creativity and problem-solving. That evening, Jack met with Admiral Harrison to share what he had learned. "It's not just Clib," Harrison told him. "Reports are coming in from all over. Imperium species are adopting human solutions to problems their rigid thinking never considered." "So what's the Imperium's response?" Jack asked. "More bureaucracy, of course," Harrison said. "They've created 7 new oversight committees just this week. But I don't think it's working. We're starting to see defections." "Defections?" Harrison nodded. 3 Imperium scientists requested asylum yesterday. They said they wanted to work without the restrictions of Imperium protocols. Over the next few weeks, the situation escalated. The Imperium's leadership, alarmed by the growing influence of human ideas, imposed even stricter regulations. But their efforts only seemed to encourage more resistance. The breaking point came when the Hunquin Imperium discovered the full extent of Lisa Cooper's activities. She hadn't just been showing movies. She had created a comprehensive database of human culture, from music to literature to science, and had been sharing it with thousands of interested aliens. Jack was present in Admiral Harrison's office when the official complaint was delivered by an Imperium representative. "The human Lisa Cooper has committed a serious violation of cultural contamination protocols," the alien official stated. "The Imperium demands she be surrendered for punishment." "What exactly is she being charged with?" Harrison asked. "Sharing forbidden human concepts," the official replied. "Particularly dangerous ideas such as individual initiative, creative thinking, and questioning established wisdom." After the official left, Harrison turned to Jack. "We have a decision to make. The Imperium is treating the spread of human ideas like a disease outbreak. But it's not a disease," Jack said. "It's freedom. These species have been under rigid control for thousands of years. We're just showing them alternatives." Harrison nodded. "The Imperium built an empire by making every species conform to their standards. They've never encountered a species they couldn't force into their mold. Until they met humans," Jack added. "Exactly. We don't conquer with weapons or intimidation. We spread ideas. And ideas, once released, are impossible to contain." As Jack left the Admiral's office, he passed a group of alien workers. One of them was telling what sounded like a joke, and the others were laughing. Not the forced, practiced response of those trying to imitate humans, but genuine laughter. Jack smiled to himself. The Imperium had tried to contain humanity with rules and paperwork. But they were discovering what many had learned before. Humans had a special talent for finding ways around barriers, for solving problems creatively, and for sharing the joy of laughter. The revolution wasn't being fought with weapons, but with jokes, ideas, and simple solutions to complex problems. And from what Jack could see, humanity was winning. Grand Marshal Phyllis Young never expected to lead a galactic revolution. 6 months ago, she had been a simple military officer sent to establish security protocols between Earth and the Imperium. Now she stood on the bridge of her ship, watching a fleet of Imperium vessels approach Earth. "They're hailing us, Marshal," said Communications Officer Steve Howard. Phyllis nodded. "Put them through." The screen lit up to show Supreme Overlord Zix Coulter, the highest authority in the Imperium. Unlike Admiral Zex Thiller, who had first contacted humanity, the Supreme Overlord was not an insectoid. He was a tall, thin being with pale, translucent skin that seemed to glow from within. He wore elaborate ceremonial robes, covered in glittering symbols. "Grand Marshal Young," the Supreme Overlord said, his voice deep and commanding. "The Council of Supreme Order has determined that humanity represents a fundamental threat to galactic stability. We've made no aggressive moves against the Imperium," Phyllis replied calmly. "Your weapons are not ships or guns," the Supreme Overlord said. "Your weapons are ideas. For 12,000 years, the Imperium has maintained perfect order through careful control of thought and behavior. In 6 months, your species has undone centuries of work." Phyllis couldn't argue with that. Reports from across Imperium space showed growing resistance to their rigid hierarchy. Species that had been obedient for millennia were now questioning orders, making jokes, and thinking for themselves. "We did not set out to disrupt your empire," Phyllis said. "We simply shared our culture." "A culture of chaos," the Supreme Overlord responded. "You have left us no choice but to contain the human contagion. You will surrender your planet for quarantine, or we will take more severe measures." The screen went dark. "That didn't go well," Steve said. "Actually, it went exactly as expected," Phyllis replied. "Alert Ambassador Reyes. It's time for Plan B." Ambassador Alan Reyes was nervous as he prepared to address the Imperium's Grand Assembly. After the Supreme Overlord's threat, he had requested an emergency session to present Earth's response. Surprisingly, the request had been granted. The Grand Assembly chamber was massive, with thousands of representatives from all Imperium species. The Supreme Overlord sat on an elevated platform at the center, surrounded by the Council of Supreme Order. "You may address the Assembly human," the Supreme Overlord said, his tone making it clear he expected surrender. Alan stepped forward. "Supreme Overlord, Honorable Council, representatives of the Imperium. I come before you today not to surrender, but to propose a new path forward." A murmur ran through the assembly. "Humanity has no desire for conflict," Alan continued. "We believe in cooperation, not conquest. Yes, our ideas may seem chaotic to you. Our humor, our creativity, our questioning of established ways, these things may disturb the order you've maintained for millennia." The Supreme Overlord leaned forward. "Then, you admit to disrupting our perfect system. Perfect?" Alan asked. "Is a system perfect if it suppresses joy, creativity, and growth? Is it perfect if it requires absolute conformity?" More murmurs ran through the crowd, louder this time. "Your species has existed for mere thousands of years," the Supreme Overlord said dismissively. "The Imperium has ruled for 12 millennia. What could you possibly teach us?" "Perhaps how to laugh," Alan suggested. "How to see problems from new angles. How to grow and change." The Supreme Overlord rose from his seat, his robes billowing dramatically. "Enough! The Council has decided. Humanity will be contained, and their dangerous ideas will be... Suddenly, something strange happened. The Supreme Overlord's elaborate ceremonial robe began to deflate around him. Air hissed from hidden seams. What had been an imposing flowing garment suddenly hung limply from his thin frame, making him look small. An almost comical silence fell over the assembly. Then, from somewhere in the back, came a sound rarely heard in the grand assembly. Laughter. One laugh became 2, then 10, and hundreds. Soon, much of the assembly was laughing. The Supreme Overlord looked around in shock. Who dares? Who is responsible for this outrage? To everyone's surprise, a member of his own honor guard stepped forward. I am Supreme Overlord. I made a small adjustment to your ceremonial pressure system. Treason! The Supreme Overlord shouted. You will be punished. For what? Asked the guard. For a practical joke? For thinking outside the box? More laughter spread through the chamber. The Supreme Overlord tried to regain control, but the damage was done. The once fearsome leader now looked ridiculous in his deflated robes. Ambassador Alan Reyes seized the moment. Members of the Imperium, for too long you have lived under rigid control. Humanity doesn't want to destroy your civilization. We want to share with you. Imagine a galaxy where we learn from each other, where creativity and order exist. In balance. As Alan spoke, something unexpected happened. Several Imperium ships that had been part of the fleet threatening Earth arrived at the assembly station. But they didn't come as conquerors. They came to defect. Many of us have been changed by contact with humans, announced the captain of the lead ship, his message playing throughout the assembly. We've remembered how to laugh, how to question, how to create. We don't want to lose these gifts. Over the next several hours, as the assembly debated, more ships arrived. Not just military vessels, but ships from across Imperium space, carrying those who supported change. Finally, after heated discussion, a vote was called. For the first time in 8,000 years, the assembly voted against the will of the Supreme Council. The motion to contain humanity was rejected. Instead, a new proposal was accepted, the formation of a galactic coalition based on cooperation rather than absolute control. 3 weeks later, Phyllis Young stood with Ambassador Reyes and watched as the former Supreme Overlord signed the new treaty. He no longer wore elaborate robes, just a simple uniform. I still don't understand how you knew this would work, the former Supreme Overlord said to Phyllis. We studied your history, she replied. For thousands of years you've conquered through fear and rigid control. But that creates a fragile system. All it takes is a little laughter to crack the foundation. And you planned the incident with my ceremonial robes? Phyllis smiled. We may have suggested the idea to your honor guard, but he was already questioning your authority. All we did was give him a funny way to show it. The former Supreme Overlord shook his head. 12,000 years of perfect order, undone by jokes and practical thinking. Not undone, Ambassador Reyes corrected. Transformed. The Imperium had forgotten that growth requires change, and change often looks like chaos at first. As they spoke, news came in from across the galaxy. Species that had been part of the Imperium were embracing new ideas while maintaining the best parts of their traditions. The rigid hierarchy was being replaced by a more flexible system that valued both order and creativity. I must admit, the former Supreme Overlord said quietly, in all our conquests, we never encountered a weapon as powerful as human humor. Phyllis smiled. That's because it's not a weapon. It's a gift. The ability to laugh at ourselves, to see problems from new angles, to find joy even in difficult times. These are the things that make life worth living. As they looked out at the stars, humans and aliens stood together, united not by force or fear, but by something much stronger: shared laughter and the promise of a future where no one had to choose between order and joy. The Empire had finally met humanity, and both would never be the same again.